another edition of the Bullheaded Podcast. I am your host, per usual, Sean Tyson, here with Zoo and P-Bush. How you guys doing?
Doing all right, man. Had to suffer firsthand watching the Bulls lose to one of the worst teams in the league last night at the UC in Chicago. Man, the Rockets just couldn't miss, and the Bulls don't play like a defense, Zoo. So first call right after I walked out of the center was to Zoo, and he said he turned it off in the third quarter, and I walked out with 8 minutes left in the fourth. So made it up for a good night at the casino. Bayless Jones, I'm sure he probably isn't going to be watching this, but play a little blackjack with him, Bears wideout. So that was kind of a positive end to the night along with the winnings. But yeah, man, going on vacation tomorrow. So it'll be a good New Year's.
Yeah, man. Kevin Porter, I got to say, Kevin Porter Jr. looks like James Harden, man. He looks like James Harden. Step back threes, lefty, crafty. I was watching this dude. He hit every step back three, man.
Yep.
Every step back there. Like, you got Sengun out there looking like Jokic Jr., man. I'm like, bro, like, what is going on, man? The team is trying to lose. The Bulls were on a 3-game winning streak. I got a little hype, man. I bet 3 straight times on the Bulls. Boom, boom, boom. Good thing I passed on the Rockets game because I was like, man, this is a trap game, man. It went out New Year or Christmas Day, man. People celebrated with the fam, man. Maybe drank some little booze. Too much food, man. Zach LaVine with the new baby, chilling. Didn't show up. Just didn't show up.
Nope. That holiday hangover.
Dude, I swear to God, man. I swear to God, that's what happened, man. All the young bloods over there in the Houston Rockets don't got family time yet, man. They probably went out, had a good time, man. It just blew out the Bulls.
Yep. On the road,
their second win.
Tough one to watch.
Embarrassing. Just embarrassing, man. Just embarrassing. How do you lose to the Rockets?
Yeah.
By like 20.
The league is deep, man. The league is deep.
Yeah.
Everybody can be beat.
No. You know what it is? No, the Bulls could just lose to anybody, man. Any given night, any team, any roster, doesn't matter who's playing or who's not playing. They could lose to the Orlando Magic without their best player, Paolo Banchero, man. They could lose to the Houston Rockets. God, this team.
It's nasty out here. Yeah. Like I say, it's going to be some tough decisions coming up for the Bulls. We're going to see the trade deadline. We'll be talking about that a little bit further down going into next year to see a couple of teams and maybe some moves they make and some moves that they don't make. But for now, the NFL is winding down. We're pretty much in the nitty-gritty of playoff hunt, playoff talk. Some teams have always sealed their fate and will not be going and advancing to the playoffs. But I kind of wanted to talk more so about the teams that are on that fringe because we were talking pre-pod or just about how like messy the AFC, NFC is. There's so many scenarios. Like, say, I was talking about the Raiders having a possibility of making it with their 6-0 record, which would be crazy if they actually did make that happen. So I wanted to ask the guys, what are some of the storylines with the fringe playoff teams and who could you see making it? Who could you see falling out? And P-Bush, I'm going to start with you.
Well, first of all, man, the Bucs pulling out yet another miracle win against the Cardinals, man.
Thank you, Tom Brady, man. Yeah. FanDuel boost, baby. Tom Brady. Go. Thank you very much.
At least he helped somebody in that one, man, because that was just a game. I thought it might even go to a tie, but Brady somehow able to pull it out. A nice game from Russell Gage. He hit some big catches for them. Julio Jones too. Man, that NFC South, we talked about it a couple times. Ugliest division in the NFL. Pretty much what the NFC East had been for historically the past couple of years. Just nobody really wanting to take charge, and the Bucs really needed to win that game because the Panthers, to be honest, they had a nice game against the Lions this past week, man, and they could be dangerous, but the Bucs are now a full game up. They do face off next week, so that's a big divisional game and could end up being the deciding factor if the Panthers win. But that's definitely one I do think is now a bit more solidified. I think the Bucs are probably going to take it. Winning the division, I know that they get, a little bit of home field there just based on how the top seeds pan out. And with the NFC, man, I don't know, man. The Giants, the tie with the Commanders is really coming down and really affecting a lot of these 7 and 8 teams like the Seahawks, the Lions, the Packers, which are kind of the 3 I'm looking at. But I think, the Giants, Zoo, you were saying pre-pod, they have a date with Jeff Saturday and the Colts this weekend, upcoming week 17. So I think that gives them, if they win that game, they're pretty much locked into one of those 2 wild card spots. I think they might actually clinch if they win because they're 8-6-1 right now. And then you look at like the Commanders, man, they're 7-7-1. I'm sure they're praying to God that they get Chase Young back because they got couple tough games, man. They gotta play. I think a trap game against the Browns could be a little bit interesting there, and then they got to go play the Cowboys. So they kind of have to at least split 1-1 there, and then you're looking at the NFC North, which the Lions. If they had beaten the Panthers this past week, I think they would have been in a prime position to get that wild card spot. Having a better record than the Commanders there, they would have been in that 7th spot. Heading into Week 17. Seahawks, man, they got a couple trap games coming up. They played a tight game against the Rams a couple weeks back. Granted, in LA, so they are at home with the 12th man this in Week 18. I think that's actually their final game. But Baker's been playing pretty well. I mean, they just blew out the Broncos, finally forced the Nathaniel Hackett firing that I think we all saw coming. Maybe I think we all expected maybe for him to ride it out for the season, but I think they want to see if there's anybody on that coaching staff that can step up and maybe be the interim for the last couple weeks and maybe prove that they don't need to go externally for a hire. And then the Packers, your Packers do, man. They find a way to hang around, man.
They do.
Rodgers he hasn't even dropped a 20-piece in fantasy this year. Absolutely atrocious season from Aaron Rodgers. But yet they're still within striking distance because finally A.J. Dillon's doing something. And Aaron Jones is being Aaron Jones. The Christian Watson situation will be interesting to see, but, they did get Romeo Doubs back as well. But I do really think that tie is going to give the Commanders that 7th spot in the playoffs. So I think the Giants and the Commanders, I think all 4 NFC East teams are going to end up making it on that side of the conferences. And it's really just that 2020 game, man, that they had. The 22-20, sorry, not 2020 year there. Unless the Lions, because there are a lot of, I think they might play the Packers in the last week of the season.
Yeah,
there's a lot of divisional games, and the Packers' last 2 games are at home, so that could prime them for a 9-8 season. But if the Commanders are able to pull off a win against the Browns and pull off one against the Cowboys, who might be resting people at that point, we'll have to see. So I do think that it's going to be all 4 NFC East teams that are in it this year, which is actually crazy to think about because I think a lot of people thought maybe the NFC West would be pumping out the most this year, and that's not the case.
Yeah, for me personally in this race, man, the one team I really, really want to see in the playoffs, man, Jacksonville Jaguars, man.
Yep.
I love this team, man. I love this team. They're like Trevor Lawrence, my feelings about T-Law, man. Finally, after a slow start, man, he's maturing right in front of our eyes right now, man. Seeing this guy ball right now, Jacksonville Jaguars, that division, I think that division is complete doo-doo, man. Tennessee Titans, obviously losing Ryan Tannehill.
Huge.
You got Willis. He's not a quarterback.
Young.
He's not an NFL. He's every time I see him try to throw a football, man, I'm like, yo, this dude looks like a college dude way over in his head right now. He's just not ready right now. He's not ready for this situation, man. Completely raw talent, physical dude, man. He's out there like a running back. Can't really throw downfield. I do not want to see the Tennessee Titans in a playoff game because every time just be like Derrick Henry. Every single time, man. King Henry the whole time.
Yep.
Even though they got some weapons, man. I remember, Sean, you mentioned the tight end, that Chizo Tsunake guy.
I struggle with his name,
Yeah, that big tight end, man. That dude's a physical specimen, man. The rookie wide receiver got a little talent out there, but you got Willis. He ain't going to get it downfield. You ain't going to get it downfield. It's a running attack. I don't want to see that. I want to see Trevor Lawrence make it to the playoffs, man, and see what he can do. Exactly. I hope so, man. You never know with these regular season games, man. Anything can happen, man. But Jacksonville Jaguars, they do have the tiebreaker over the Tennessee Titans, so that's a good thing right now. And play face off. So pretty much the Jacksonville Jaguars control their own destiny. They control their own destiny. Though. Yeah, exactly.
I think in Week 18.
Exactly. They control their own destiny, so it's all on them to get it done right now. So that's one team I really, really want to get in. On the AFC side, man. For me, for the NFC side, man, please no Commanders, please no Giants, man. I'm sorry. These are some cute stories, man. 500 ball clubs, man. Really, really mediocre quarterbacks. They play hard, rushing attack, defense, physicality. I've seen this story, man. These are cute teams that make it in and get blown out.
Yep.
Like the New York Giants is one of those teams that they just scrap it away and then the game gets close, and then in clutch time, they somehow make one extra throw, get one Saquon Barkley rushing touchdown, clinches the victory. So, like, they're pretty much winning these games by one possession every single time, sort of like the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes.
But obviously, the Giants are a lot less talented of a roster, because of Danny Dimes, man. His best receiver is Slayton as wide receiver one. So, like, that team, it's a cute story. I want the cute story to end, man. I want some excitement, man. I want some Green Bay Packers to make it, man. Even though I said this year I was very bearish on the Green Bay Packers. Very, very bearish. With all the shenanigans going on in the offseason. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers still playing like duty. I watched that game, missed some throws, man. Like, when Aaron Rodgers missed wide open passes, wide open touchdown. Come on. Alan Lazard dropping passes. Christian Watson wide open, missing the throw. Like, I am shocked. The only reason the Green Bay Packers got that victory is because Tua got concussed. He got concussed. He got concussed, and they didn't even know. And there was a reason why Tua, we were like, this dude throwing picks like every single time. Like, he had like 4 picks. Like, the dude was concussed. So you played against a quarterback that shouldn't be playing NFL, should have been in a hospital. Instead, he was playing against the Green Bay Packers, and the Green Bay Packers sneak out a victory. No. They didn't sneak out a victory. The QB was injured and shouldn't have been playing football, and that's why they beat them. Like, this Green Bay Packers team is not a good football team. I don't know about the gameplay with Aaron Jones either, because my boy Aaron Jones didn't touch the ball that much, man. It was the A.J. Dillon show. Well, looking like the colder it gets, man, the more A.J. Dillon starts to shine, because they love giving it to A.J. Dillon right now. Oh, yeah. Like, as a fantasy shareholder of Aaron Jones, man, it sank my season this year. So I have a good donut now. I got 0 playoff teams in the finals. This hasn't happened in multiple years, man. The end of a dynasty, man. A humble experience this year. We got to make some adjustments for next year. But my Lord, Aaron Jones, man. So the Green Bay Packers, I just want to see them because I'm a Packers fan, and hopefully Aaron Rodgers shows up in the playoffs. But my, oh my, man.
Good luck.
I'm not very bullish, man. I am not very bullish. But you look at these NFC teams. With this additional playoffs team, man, some really, really bad teams are going to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. NFC
like, do I want to see Taylor Heineke? Stop it. Stop it. I don't want to see Taylor Heineke. He's a backup quarterback, man. He's a backup quarterback. No, I don't want to see these teams, man. Like Seattle. Seattle. Nah. This is one of those cute stories, man.
Down the stretch.
It's a cute story, man. They're regressing back to the mean. They're a 500/ below 500 ball club. No, I don't want to see them, man. Like, the only time I like the Detroit Lions because sometimes at home they're pretty good, but in the playoffs you're gonna be on the road.
Yeah, they're gonna be on the road.
You're gonna be on the road. Jared Goff on the road is atrocious. So Detroit, I don't want to see that team either. And then you got the Panthers and Saints. Like, stop it. Those teams are watchable.
Once you get down there,
they're like, shout out to the Carolina Panthers because that game shocked me. Because you got Deontay Foreman and Chubba Hubba running 100 rushing yards, just carving through that defense like a hot knife through butter, man. Like, I was just like, what is going on? Like, Deontay Foreman dropping 100 plus. Like, they had 2 running backs drop 100 yards in one half.
Yep.
That is incredible. So, like, shout outs to Carolina Panthers showing some heart. The Saints, stop it. I don't want to watch them play like them. That Saints Cleveland Browns game, betting the under was the easiest bet of my entire life, man. Especially with the snow and the cold, man. That's the easiest bet ever. Like, come on, man.
Kamara finally scored, though. I feel like he'd been on a drought for 8 to 9 weeks at that point, man.
Oh yeah,
but brutal.
Oh yeah.
I mean, some bad teams are going to be making, and I think that they expanded it for the reason to incentivize going for the single bye, right? For the 1 seed instead of having the top 2. I thought that was a good decision, but at the same time, Commanders snuck in, a couple years ago as the final spot. They actually gave the Bucs a pretty good game, if you remember that.
I do remember that. That
was kind of Heineke's coming out party.
Very competitive.
Very competitive. I do think that the Lions could cause people problems just because their offense can be a juggernaut. But like you said, Zoo, they're going to be on the road. And I think the only reason I don't see them making it is because they got to go into Lambeau in Week 18.
Yep.
Weather conditions, they're normally, the reason Goff's an LA guy and now he's a dome guy. That's why he likes the warm weather and he likes the comfort of the dome. That's why he's so good at home, I think. He's dropping 30 pieces in fantasy when he's at home. You put him in Green Bay on January 8th or whatever it'll be. Jesus, man, I think he's going to seriously struggle. And, that Packers defense is no joke. I mean, Jair Alexander had some nice plays. Hell of a post-game interview. That was hilarious after he talking about Tua pick. But I do want to talk about that too, because I think the AFC, man, the Dolphins faltering, these past couple weeks. I mean, it's just been tough to watch with all the weapons that they have. And, Mostert's been fumbling the ball. They were without Wilson there for a little bit as well to injury, came back and did score a touchdown. I mean, they're sitting at 8-7. The only two, the Chargers win, obviously locked them their playoff position.
Yeah.
So the only one is either the AFC South, to your point, Zoo, the Jags, I think might take that one. But then you look at, all the other 7 and 8 teams that are in the AFC, and it's Patriots, Jets, who God knows what they're going to be doing at quarterback. Who knows where Mike White's at this point. And then, you got the Steelers and, the Raiders. You said the same thing, Sean. They're somehow still in it at 6-9 there.
They're out in my book, but it was nice to put up as a graphic. Yeah.
But once again, Mike Tomlin somehow going to be getting the Steelers to hovering around 500 with the worst quarterback situation, I think, of the year, besides the Jets. And, Najee's been playing well. Their defense is obviously always a threat, but man, they shut down Devontae Adams and the Raiders in that game last week. So, I don't think that they'll end up clutching it out. I think they have pretty tough 2 division games. We still don't really know where Lamar's at. I think Harbaugh's been keeping it really quiet of where Lamar Jackson is and in his status, at least since I read something about it this morning. So, that could be a game that they win. But man, I do not want to see the Steelers, and I really don't want to see the Jets, even though the Jets could defensively keep up with pretty much any team. And I think that would be interesting. But to your point, Zoo, that's not exciting to watch, man. I don't want to watch, if Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback or whatever. Oh my God. So yeah, man, I think that we need the Dolphins to get in there. We need Tua to hopefully be healthy again. Man, he's just had terrible luck with the concussions this year. And I don't know. He's not having a bad season. I think a lot of people gave him a bad rap right after this game. But to your point, no one really knew what was going on in his head, actually. So yeah, I just hope the Dolphins pull it out for that final wild card spot, man.
It's gonna be tough though, man. This stretch, obviously I feel like this stretch it was a humbling experience. They were riding high, beating all these bad teams, the Bears, the Browns, the Texans, and then you got the Chargers, Bills, and 49ers, and then Packers, and you throw them in there. So that was a humbling experience. Those teams are legit teams, especially the Bills and the Niners, because I think those are legit Super Bowl contenders out there. So obviously those teams, man, the elite defense shutting them down a little more, man. And you got to finish off with the Patriots and Jets who are fighting for the playoff lives right now.
It's going to define it.
Exactly. So I'm it's going to be a tough finish. Obviously, if Tua doesn't play, they haven't been winning games this year.
No.
So if Tua is ruled out, man, I think the Dolphins are out if he doesn't play, especially the next 2 games. So,
because if you flip that, I mean, those 2 teams are the ones that are on the fringe.
Exactly.
Right? So you put them at 8-8. Who knows what the tiebreaker is on those 2 with the Jets and the Pats? But having a lot of teams on the fringe are finishing off with divisional games that are really going to flip the script, and I think we'll have even a better idea after this week. Going into Week 18, which are the must-win games for each respective team.
Looking at the bottom tier, I guess the fringe teams we're talking about. Honestly, we went through a lot of the teams, and if you just go through the fringe teams, there's probably 2 teams that you actually want to see in the playoffs. There's not a lot of teams that you actually want to see in there, because I'm gonna tell you right now, I know the Bucks are in, but I don't want to see them in the playoffs. They're not a good team. They're not. They don't score. If they can't get to, or if any team can get past 25 points, they're cooked.
Oh, absolutely.
They're cooked. And it always feels like we're over romanticizing Tom Brady's comebacks, but it's hiding the fact that he's not been good this year. And their defense hasn't been the greatest, even though they've been okay. But it's it's okay to say Father Time has kind of caught up to him. And it's the same thing you feel in every sport with a lot of the aging greats. It's kind of we start being well, if they just had an elite offensive, better offensive line, because that offensive line has been like a mash unit. So, if you're dealing with any quarterback in the league, you need to have a elite offensive line when you're dealing with Brady, because if you don't, he's not going to get hit. He's just going to throw the ball out of bounds or dirt, give it a dirt ball. He's just not going to get hit. So that kind of messes up rhythm with maybe trying to get the ball down the field. But I've watched a couple of their games, like you say, NFC South. You're getting a lot of those division games down here where I live at, so they just are not a good watch. So I don't want to see them in the playoffs, even though they're going to make it. In the NFC, outside of them, with the NFC East team, Giants and Commanders, they're like the classic team of they probably shouldn't have won this year because if they would have bottomed out, they could have got a quarterback, like an elite quarterback or a quarterback that has potential. And I think that would have maybe raised their ceiling even more because it could have been in a situation where, say you're the Giants and you got one of the, I don't think you probably could have got Bryce Young, but like CJ Stroud, Will Levis, one of those guys, and you insert him with the weapons that the Giants have. And then, with the running back situation, vice versa with the plethora of receivers you got in Washington and then the 2 running backs you got from Washington and all that, their defense. That could have been a way better situation. But I know it's the NFL and you're trying to prove yourself and teams are just, Brian Daboll, I can't really fault him because he's a first-year head coach with the Giants. So you're going to want to make an impression and say, look, we're here to fight. We're not trying to bottom out and, get a high draft pick. But both of those teams, like I said, it's just the quarterbacks. We already know what they're going to be. They're going to be game managers. We're going to see them throw 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 210 yards, and they're probably going to have a rushing touchdown. Yeah. So just like a 5-yard scoot or scramble to get into the end zone and win the game. Like it's just the script with that. So you want to see elite quarterbacks or at least quarterbacks with the pedigree of being elite. So that's why I'm excited. The Chargers got in finally, and they clinched their spot because we know they've been up and down. But I feel like a lot of the reason why the Chargers have been up and down is because they've been injured. They've been injured in the receiver core a lot. Like the defense has been up and down with their injuries. It's just kind of been a mash unit on both sides of the ball. So hopefully, if they get into the playoffs healthy and they're able to play, and selfishly, I picked them before the season to get to the Super Bowl. So it's like I'm rooting for them. On the flip side, I also picked the Packers, and I kind of don't want to really see them. But it would, what would be hilarious? I keep saying this. Out of all the years, this would be the year somehow the Packers got to the championship game with a chance to win it because this year is so jumbled. It's so jumbled up with how every team in the playoff is playing. Because honestly, if you look at the NFC, the Eagles with Hurts, I think they're going to shut them down into the playoffs because with what Gardner did last week or this past week, or you say Saturday.
Yeah, you look good.
He didn't look
good.
Productive. So they're going to be playing at home. I forgot who they're playing at home, but I'm pretty sure they're going to get that win, which means I'm pretty sure they lock up the division if they get that win. So with that, you have Gardner to play out the rest of the season, heal up Jalen as much as you can, but that's still a concern because they lost their right tackle.
They play the Saints. W.
Yeah, so that's a dub. That's a dub because the Saints are technically in it just like the Raiders, but no, there's just a lot of stuff that's happened for them to win it. So I'm pretty good on that. But the Eagles, they kind of got a couple of concerns just with a few injuries. Dallas is so weird because everybody talked about their defense being elite, and it just hasn't shown up in the last 6 or 7 weeks.
Nope.
I was very confident starting Gardner last week or this past week because I just knew that with what I saw, even though Gardner Minshew is not Trevor Lawrence, I just saw the amount that Trevor Lawrence was throwing all over the field. It's like, man, this defense everybody's talking about with Dallas, where is it? And so then I was pretty sure inside dome, good conditions, let's ride with Gardner. And he was able to get it done, fantasy-wise. But, it's the Cowboys. I just have to actually see them get to a championship game to actually believe it. I can't have any faith saying, yes, they're going to be a team that locks it down and makes a run throughout the playoffs. So in the NFC, it's just a lot of up and downs. I've talked about the Bucs, and then what if the Giants and the Commanders make it? So if you're telling me that's the list of teams you have to go through, especially with Jalen's health, if that being the main source, if Jalen's not healthy, the Packers could run to the championship game. Now the 49ers, I know their team. I think overall they have the deepest team offensively and defensively. But it's just hard. I know Purdy's been really, really solid. But, man, asking a rookie to just be okay, it's playoff time, and you're going to be as unflappable. That's another one you got to see it to believe it. Because I just can't believe that a rookie quarterback who was third string is going to just take them to the freaking Super Bowl or to at least the NFC Championship game. No.
But that defense. Oh my God. That's an all-time defense right now. That's all-time defense right now. So, the guy doesn't have to do much right now. The QB right now doesn't got to do much. George Kittle has emerged.
Oh yeah,
Purdy and Kittle. Purdy and Kittle right now got a little connection going on. That's by far his favorite target. So he's been balling a lot right now. So shout out to him for getting it done and building chemistry with the new quarterback so quickly, man. But that defense, man, it is a scary, scary defense. Shout out to the 49ers, my team, to make it out, man. Even Trey Lance, bye, Trey Lance. Don't need you, man. Brock Purdy, man. Game manager, man. All you need is a game manager with this roster.
Yep.
That's all you need. Like
Trey Lance is praying for a first round exit or a second round exit, whatever. He's praying for it because if they somehow get to an NFC Championship game or perhaps the Super Bowl,
they're bigger the Super Bowl.
Oh man, like he's all
flip him.
But man, listen. Then we're thinking of trade scenarios because, I mean, you could justify if Purdy got to, I could see him getting traded to a team that desperately needs a quarterback. You could justify being like, hey, look, this kid that was our third string quarterback got us to the Super Bowl. There's a chance he could keep improving. Let's just ride it out. Then Trey Lance becomes some nice draft capital, and I don't think you get what you traded for him. You're not going to get that, but
no.
You can get something decent. And like you say, a team that's desperate enough, like Carolina, the Jets, teams that are hell, even the freaking Commanders and the Giants could be in the market to get the quarterback, even though they may make the playoffs. Like they could be a team that could be like, hey, I'll trade a couple of people and draft picks to get Trey Lance. So that's going to be a storyline for the offseason. But right now, as a betting man, I don't know where I would go. There's no team I would put automatic money on because even in the AFC, all the teams that have the elite quarterbacks, they can all win. Even though I'm kind of a little down on the Bills. Little down on the Bills. Josh Allen can't be your running back.
He's been throwing a lot of picks, man.
Singletary
been throwing a lot of picks in the red zone.
I need it consistently from Singletary. I can't have it one or two.
They got to feed him consistently.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They keep getting. I don't like Josh Allen running around like he's just RB1. It's great for fantasy, but it's not great for playoff longevity. Like you don't need that from your quarterback. You need him on the field throwing the ball. Like even though he could probably withstand a lot of hits, I just don't like seeing that. It's the same thing. I mean, I wouldn't say Jalen. That's part of the reason why he's hurt, but living in this league, man, you got to make your hay throwing from the pocket. You just can't be running around. You can do that so often, like when you're trying to win a game or come from behind. But when it's time to make plays and when it's crunch time, you need to be doing it from the pocket. You just have to. All the great ones do it.
Yep.
So I don't know. And another side note on Lamar, like. That's going to be very interesting. If I'm the Ravens, I probably don't play him to the playoffs because they've already clinched. So I just would rest him to the playoffs because depending on the matchups, I mean, maybe you want to bring him back for the last week to maybe get him some rhythm, but I don't know. If I'm Lamar,
not a while.
Personally, I would sit out because at this point, if I somehow get to the playoffs and then can actually win a playoff game, I'll have a lot more negotiating power. So I don't know. Who knows? There's a lot of things in the NFL, man. It's a lot of things you got to think about when you're going towards the finish line of getting to the playoffs or trying to clinch or do whatever. So we're going to be looking into that and different scenarios to come for the week 17 and week 18. But
2 hours later,
college football is here, man. It's bowl season right now. So a lot of this inventory that's being played on TV right now is really solely for betting purposes if you bet college football because the college football playoff with the 4 teams, that's pretty much what everybody cares about. These bowl games, like I said, are for betting or for the team that you root for, and you're just happy to go and see them play for one last time. But we got some pretty interesting matchups. I think this is a unique idea that college football has done, and they're going to continue to expand it. So I'm excited about that. But we got a couple games coming up, and it's the blue bloods in TCU. TCU will argue that they've been there and they've done their due diligence to get to the playoffs and be considered more of a blue blood. But the other teams with Georgia, Michigan, and I'm blanking on the other one. Ohio State snuck in. I forgot. Number 4 seed with Ohio State snuck in after their kind of I guess you could say
loss.
Yeah, the embarrassing loss they had with Michigan, which was I guess some people that were in the know in college football that was coming, but. With these matchups, man, we're looking at some interesting lines and things of that nature. So I wanted to ask the guys, what are some betting, I guess you could say practices you would do with these games? And people, I'm gonna start with you.
This is tough, man. I mean, I'm not, I'm not a huge college fan, but I do like to watch the big games. Zoo and I unfortunately did not go to a football school, so it was not ingrained in our minds in college. We were a basketball school at Indiana, so But, being in the Big Ten, the thing about Big Ten sports is I feel like everybody just beats up on each other. And then you kind of get to the playoff scenarios or March Madness if it's basketball, right? And they're kind of the tried and true tested teams. But, I'm looking at that Georgia-Ohio State game. And look, man, I mean, Sean, you pipe in wherever you want because I know CJ Stroud, you're pretty high on him this year for the NFL draft, but he's not as mobile as some previous Ohio State quarterbacks.
Definitely not as mobile as Fields. No,
not as Fields. I mean,
nobody is.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Touche.
So good.
Touche. But I'm looking at that team. I mean, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be the key on that side. I mean, kid's an absolute tank. I think he's an All-American this year, rightfully so. He's made some ridiculous catches. Got a huge yards per catch stat this year. But I'm just looking at this Georgia team, man, and I know everyone knows their defense, but it's just like their linemen on the interior on both sides of the football has to be the best in the country. It was usually Bama in years past, and Georgia was always kind of right there with them. But I'm just looking at this, Stetson Bennett. He doesn't get sacked that often, but the percentages of both of these quarterbacks in that game, when they are pressured heavily, drops from like 72% without pressure to like in the 40s, low 40s for both of these quarterbacks. So I just believe that Georgia will have a better time getting to the quarterback, getting to Stroud. And at the same time, Ohio State, even though their defense did improve a bit this year, compared to years past, where usually they were kind of the secondary, they usually had some good corners coming out of there. I just think that you compare these overall two teams, I'm taking Georgia money line here. And it's really hard to not just pick the favorites in college. I feel like there's rarely major upsets, in the college football playoffs. So I'm also going with Michigan for a similar reason, man. I just think, Dugan's good. I do think Quentin Johnson, right? He might be the best wide receiver coming out of the draft this year. But at the same time, Michigan has beat up on some good teams this year. You spoke on the Ohio State massive, I think it was like 45-23. But I just love their running game, man. Donovan Edwards, he's putting up like 8 to 10 yards per carry in the past couple games against Purdue and the Ohio State game, respectively. So I think TCU, Michigan doesn't want to get into a shootout. I think that would be their only issue if Duggan did kind of catch fire and, Quentin was having a massive game. They do have their hands full as a secondary on the Michigan side. But once again, I think it's just going to be a Michigan win here. I'm going to pick the favorite. I'm going to take money line on both of the games with the favorites.
Yeah, for me, man, straight up chalk, man. Georgia, number 2 in defense, number 2 in defense, number 8 in offense, man. Enough said, man. The team is undefeated. And they're blowing out every team. The only game that was a little close was that Missouri game, which is very fluky. So when they win, they win big.
Right.
And it's not even close. And right now, I'm looking at the spread, 6.5. Only by a tutty, I'm taking them all day, every day, man. All day, every day, man. This team, because this Ohio State team got embarrassed by their rivals. This is a rivalry game.
Yep.
This is like historically, like the Michigan Wolverines usually lose this game historically. Like it was the whole thing with Harbaugh. He couldn't get it done against Ohio State, man. People wanted to fire him. Man, this guy NFL, dude, go back to NFL, man. But this year he's proving a lot this year. By far his best season, obviously going undefeated. So, like, obviously I would say that's in the same tier as Georgia. And they whoop their ass. So, based on the transit property, man, Georgia Bulldogs all day, man. Are you kidding me? Like, no, dude, top 10 defense, top 10 offense, blows out every team, man. Barbecue chicken, man. That's all I see, barbecue chicken. Like, I'm hoping that Stroud guy can make the game a little interesting, man. But for me, man, 6.5 point spread. It's going to move, man. I feel like if it moves to 7, man, I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that. I don't want that push, man. I want that 6.5 tutty victory, man. So I'm going with the Georgia Bulldogs, man. And obviously TCU is Michigan, man, as I previously said, man. That Michigan whooping against Ohio State, that's said enough to me, man. Because there's a lot of games in college football. Games don't matter, man. You're playing against inferior competition. You can't really take away beating on these little schools out there, beating them by 20. But when you beat a top dog like OSU with that pedigree, man, that shows me a lot. And Harbaugh, man, this dude's an elite coach at every level. NFL, man, been to the Super Bowl, multiple conference championships, man. This guy knows how to coach big games, man. Obviously, they rely on the rushing attack a lot, which I don't know. I like a little diversification, man. I need a little aerial attack, but their rushing attack, they're gonna see the Bulldogs down there, man. Get a little humbled real quickly. But against TCU, come on, Texas Christian University, come on, man. Blue Bloods all day, man. Blue Bloods all day. Finally, Michigan can prove themselves that they're actually a Blue Blood now because it's been a while since they've been an elite college football team.
It would be interesting to see a Michigan-Ohio State rematch, though. That
would be amazing.
A Big Ten, and I think
rivalry game in a championship.
Sean,
game?
I mean, that would easily be the first Big Ten matchup. I know we've had some SEC matchups.
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, it would definitely be the first Big Ten matchup for the playoffs.
Because usually Michigan hasn't snuck in. It's usually just been Ohio State in there. Yeah, so I mean, I have a roommate who's an Ohio State fan. I'm sure he's hoping for it. He'll be at the game. But I think he's going with his mind over his heart when it comes to betting. He's probably being a smart man and taking Georgia.
Listen, earlier in the process of when I would say the end of the rivalry weekend was over, and they kind of were sorting out who's going to be playing who, and they were doing the whole revealing of the playoffs and who was going to actually get in. When I first saw that Georgia and Ohio State was matched up, I was like, it's going to be a freaking Georgia probably going to roll by 14, 17 points, whatever. They're going to do what they do. And Michigan, TCU, whatever, that might be a closer game just because Michigan likes to run the ball, and when you're not as dynamic in the air, you do a lot of ball control, but then if the other team you're playing can throw the ball a little bit, it kind of takes you out of what you like to do. And the dude for TCU, Max Duggan, he was a Heisman finalist. He's a good. I wouldn't say he's a great quarterback, but he's a good quarterback considering the team that he has around him with TCU because they have weapons, but they're not a lot of high major weapons. But man, now that you guys, it's making me want to argue for Ohio State now because it's you guys for Georgia. It's I need maybe anybody who's an Ohio State fan watching or someone who stumbles into this and is betting Ohio State. I looked at the odds, just all the type of odds, and Ohio State's plus 220 money line. So it's okay, well, it's decent. But if you watch and you guys didn't watch it, but the SEC championship game, I watched that between LSU and Georgia. And Jaden Daniels, he's a decent quarterback. He got better as the year went on. Throwing in the SEC, he played at the beginning against Florida State, and he really just ran around the entire time. He had a couple good passes on that last drive. But he's gotten better, and he came into that game with a bum ankle. So he really couldn't really plant and do a lot of down-the-field throws. But in those first two drives, he was dicing up the Georgia defense. And it wasn't a fluke. He was converting third downs. He was getting the ball out pretty quickly. And, a lot of that's because he was hurt, but so he couldn't get hit. But he looked good on those first two drives. Now, Georgia beat LSU 50-3, but if you look closely in those first two drives, LSU Georgia, LSU drove the ball down the field. They got to the 3-yard line, had to kick a field goal. It was short because they got penalties, backed them up, and then it was short, and it was a live ball, and Georgia scored 7-0. And then LSU came right back down, drove again, with pretty much all pass plays, diced them down the field, got it 7-7. And then it was a back and forth. Georgia scored, and LSU was driving again, and then a weird play happened where he threw a slant, receiver kind of missed it. It bounced off his helmet. Georgia caught it, returned it. It didn't just turn into a blowout because of the momentum. But it kind of made me perk my ears. Jaden Daniels, in terms of SEC standards, he's probably middle of the road in terms of quarterbacks. But he's, he can make passes if he doesn't have pressure like most quarterbacks. So then you start to think you go through Georgia's schedule. Will Levis, a lot of people like him because of his characteristics, but I don't think he's this top tier quarterback. Some people do, some people don't, but I don't think he's a top. He's going to be in the top group, but I don't think he's in that group for me personally. So you start going through teams that actually had great quarterbacks. And one thing about, I wouldn't say all SEC teams, but for example, Alabama, CJ Stroud is not on the level of Deshaun Watson. We know that, but any quarterback that's good and can make throws and has pedigree, it kind of gives you pause to be okay, have they seen a quarterback to this degree? And Ohio State now, they've lost a couple of their weapons, their best running back got hurt, and then I guess you could say going into the year would have been a number one receiver. He had hamstring issues, so he's not playing. But Marvin Harrison is good. Ohio State, they're going to always have their backup receivers are usually 4- and 5-star guys, so they're going to have guys that can play. Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting to me to see how Georgia responds if Ohio State gets up, because C.J. Stroud is a quarterback that he's getting buzz for a reason in the NFL draft. It may not be as mobile, but Ohio State they don't have the trenches that Georgia has, because Georgia every year, every SEC team, if they're in the playoffs, they have great trenches. Their offensive line and defensive line are always great. So you're never going to have to worry about that. But Ohio State is one of the few teams outside of the SEC footprint that recruits well in the trenches. So it's if they can hold up and be decent and give Stroud some time, just looking at how Jaden Daniels, who I don't think is as good as C.J. Stroud, plays or his potential, if CJ Stroud can get enough time and actually make some throws, man, it could get interesting because that's the one thing about sometimes in ACC, you don't get the greatest of quarterback play and you're not tested. And I think that happened with Bama with Deshaun. Like, I think Bama was like, well, we're just better on the trenches and we're going to be on the play. And it's like, well, Clemson wasn't as good as on the trenches when they were playing Bama, but Deshaun was just such a good quarterback that, it doesn't matter. So it will be interesting.
Hunter Renfrow either.
Yeah, they didn't have Hunter Renfrow. Who else was in that game? I don't think Mike Williams. I don't think was in that game. He might have been a couple years before that. But they had some guys out there on the. I think Amari Rodgers is in that. I think one of those championship runs. But it's interesting with the quarterback because TCU Michigan Duggan I don't think is a game changer. So like Michigan I think can get away with running the ball, being physical, controlling the lead, taking up a clock, and just punching it in and having like these 12, 13-play drives. That's what they're going to do. So I think Michigan's going to be able to do that against TCU because TCU I don't think has the star power or the potential that Ohio State has. And I think Ohio State getting their ass kicked against Michigan because you got to think, they didn't get to go play another game after that. They had to sit in that. So I think they may be a little more motivated to be like, if we could just get a chance to get back at Michigan. So it's like now that you guys just picked the favorites, like now I kind of just want to argue for Ohio State. Like
you're picking that Big Ten matchup.
Like I might, like I say, if I had cash like that, and like I say, I'm not the betting guy, but if I had a little cash to splurge, I might throw money line down on Michigan or Ohio State. I might do it.
I mean, it's good.
CJ Stroud, it's decent. It's like I ain't gonna lie. If it was, I don't know, if money line was like plus 400, I would throw all the money down because then now you're just no, there's nothing that you could tell me if they got like it was plus 400, plus 350. I would probably throw a lot of money down on that because, like you say, man, Ohio State is one of those Big Ten programs. It's not an accident. Michigan is kind of a little bit newer because I think Harbaugh's just been such a great coach, and I also think Michigan's just a bad matchup for Ohio State. But if you just go and look down at recruiting records for the last 10, 15 years, Ohio State's been top 5 probably 12 out of those 15 years. They get guys. And they always get good quarterback play. And Ryan Day has been one of the few coaches you could say in college that a lot of, I guess you say, his contemporaries and people who are in the NFL will be like, yeah, he could coach in football, like college and NFL. He's one of those guys. Because he's just so good with quarterbacks. Outside of Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley's a little bit of a different like monster. And it would have been very interesting if they would have not wet the bet against Utah to see Caleb Williams
man,
in
the second time. Man. It would have been so great to see him in the playoff environment.
God, it would have been amazing. He has a chance next year. He's only a true sophomore.
Number 1 overall pick next year.
Yeah, he's definitely it's his to lose.
That would have been a hell of a matchup, USC versus Georgia. That would have been.
But selfishly, I'm rooting for Ohio State, Michigan because I just want to see those. That's like a classic rivalry in a championship game. Like that would be crazy. Just that the ratings. I bet you that would probably blow out. I don't know. Since the playoff has been in existence, like ratings wise, because it gets no better than that. That's like the preeminent rivalry in college football, and you're playing that in a national championship game. Like, come on, bro, that would just be incredible. But now that I say that, we probably get TCU Georgia.
There you go.
We definitely get TCU Georgia now. And shout out to the Horned Frogs, man. And don't take no offense to us not saying you're Blue Bloods, but you're not. You're just not of that ilk. But you do have a great program, and they're building, and they have a lot of with NIL. They have a lot of big money players in Texas with making, I guess you could say, necessary payments. So they're going to be around for a while, for sure. But that was a pod for today. Make sure you guys tune in to all of our social media channels, Bullheaded_pod with Instagram, Bullheaded864 with TikTok, Quantron Knows with YouTube. Post all kind of variety amount of topics. Like I said, on the YouTube page, we'll be getting this out. This is live, so you guys can go back and watch it. Audio adventure, if you like to listen to Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple, make sure you give us a 5-star review. And for me, Zoo, and P. Bush, we are out.